Okay, let's dive in. Today we're cracking open some source material specifically for anyone just starting their journey learning English.
That's right. We've got a text here that doesn't just list things off. It really lays out practical, actionable strategies, things designed precisely for beginners.
Exactly. And the goal isn't to overwhelm you, right? It's more about giving you a clear, manageable path.
hmm Our mission here is to unpack the key tactics from this source, pull out the most useful steps, and maybe some of those surprising insights that can really help you make progress without feeling lost.
Yeah, without feeling like you're just drowning in grammar rules or endless vocabulary lists.
Think of it like a shortcut, not cutting corners, but getting straight to the core of how to learn effectively right from day one, all based on what this source says works.
And we want to highlight some facts that can honestly speed things up for you, make the whole process maybe a bit less scary, hopefully even enjoyable.
So looking at the source material, it really frames improving English as, well, a journey. It needs specific strategies, sure, but also the right mindset.
Right, it emphasizes taking clear steps, manageable ones, rather than trying to, eat the whole elephant at once.
And one of the very first things the source zeroes in on is fundamental vocabulary. But it has this really interesting, almost surprising insight right at the start.
Oh, what does it say about words for beginners?
Well, it drops this stat that for everyday conversation, you really only need about the top 1,000 words. That's it.
Just 1,000.
Yeah, and get this, those 1,000 words, they make up nearly 85% of what people actually say in normal daily interactions.
Wait, 85% from just 1,000 words.
Yeah.
Wow, that completely changes the perspective, doesn't it?
It really does.
It means you can get functional pretty quickly without that pressure of needing a massive vocabulary right away. That's a huge aha moment.
Absolutely. The source presents it as the ultimate efficiency hack for beginners. Focus on those high-frequency words first. They're the building blocks.
Okay, so if those first 1,000 are so crucial, how does the source suggest you actually learn them? What are the practical steps?
It lists a few really solid methods, things like using flashcards. It specifically mentions digital tools like Anki or Quizlet.
Ah, right, because they use spaced repetition, yeah. Does the source talk about that? How reviewing at the right time helps things stick?
Exactly. That timed review helps move words into your long-term memory. And it also really pushes reading, especially simpler stuff like children's books or beginner novels.
Why those specifically?
Because you see the words in action,
Yeah.
used naturally in sentences and stories. Context is key. It's way better than just memorizing lists.
Yeah, learning a word in isolation is tough. Seeing it used, that clicks better. What else?
Keeping a vocabulary notebook is another one. A classic, but it works. Reviewing it regularly. And grouping words by themes.
Theme is like,
All the words for food together, or travel, or family. The source says that helps your brain make connections and remember things more easily.
got it. So for you listening, thinking about this, how could you maybe pick just 10 of those first 1,000 words this week and start practicing them using one of these methods? Flashcards, maybe finding them in a simple story.
It's a good challenge. And speaking of practical tools that help learning stick,
That brings us neatly to the second big strategy the source highlights, using technology.
yeah, it really points out how much language learning apps have, well, changed the game for beginners. They're often interactive, sometimes gamified.
Which helps with engagement, right? Keeping you coming back.
Totally. Consistency is huge. The source gives some specific app recommendations. Duolingo gets a mention, obviously known for making it feel like a game.
Making it fun definitely lowers the barrier to entry, helps build that daily habit.
Memrise comes up too, specifically for vocabulary, using that repetition and spaced learning we were just talking about, making words stick.
Which, as the source implies, taps into how our memory actually works. Smart.
It also recommends BBC Learning English.
Yeah.
Great resource. Loads of videos, articles, different levels, and Grammarly for writing.
Ah, Grammarly's useful. It doesn't just correct you. It often tells you why it's wrong.
Exactly. That explanation turns a mistake into a proper learning opportunity.
Not just a red line.
And Google Translate is mentioned, but with a bit of caution. Useful for a quick check, maybe, but the source warns against relying on it too heavily for understanding or building sentences.
Right, it can lead you astray sometimes. So this raises a question for you listening. Based on what the source suggests, which of these tools, Duolingo, Memrise, BBC Learning English, Grammarly, could you maybe explore or try adding to your routine, even starting today?
Okay, so we've got vocabulary building using tech tools, But eventually, you have to actually use the language, right?
Which brings us to a strategy that, let's be honest, can feel the most daunting for beginners: practicing speaking regularly.
Absolutely. Speaking is where the rubber meets the road. And the source is really clear on this. Making mistakes is okay. In fact, it says it's a necessary part of building fluency and confidence.
You have to try, maybe stumble a bit to move forward.
Exactly. And the source gives some great practical ways to actually do this, even if you feel nervous. Finding language exchange partners online. It mentions platforms like Tandem or HelloTalk.
Yeah, talking to a real person, that gives you authentic practice, maybe some gentle feedback too.
hmm It also suggests just speaking to yourself in English, like narrate your day. Talk through your plans out loud in English.
That sounds simple, but I can see how it would help. You start thinking directly in English, not just translating in your head.
Right. Another tip from the source, record your voice reading something aloud, then listen back. Helps you hear your own pronunciation. Spot areas to improve.
Oh, that's a good one. A bit confronting maybe, but useful.
And joining English clubs, speaking groups, online forums, finding a supportive space to practice is key.
What's really interesting here, and the source hints at this, is the difference between passive skills reading, listening, and active skills like speaking. You have to produce the language to get truly comfortable.
Definitely. So thinking about these methods from the source language partners, talking to yourself, recording, groups, how could you fit even just a few minutes of speaking practice into your routine this week? Remember, even talking to yourself counts.
Okay, so speaking is crucial, and that leads us naturally to the other side of the coin, understanding what people are saying to you.
Which is key strategy number 4 from the source.
Hmm.
Mastering listening. It calls listening essential. Essential for understanding natural, spoken English, and also for just absorbing new language, almost without trying.
Yeah, listening helps you pick up the rhythm, the intonation, the sounds of English. That feeds back into your own speaking, doesn't it?
Totally. And the source gives specific listening tips for beginners, watching English cartoons or TV shows. But, and this is important with subtitles at first.
Right. The subtitles act like training wheels. They give you support, help you connect the sound to the word without letting you just tune out.
Exactly. It also recommends podcasts that are specifically designed for English learners. They often speak a bit slower, maybe explain tricky words.
Using material that's actually at your level makes a huge difference.
hmm The source also mentions repeating what you hear. There's a technique called shadowing, and watching YouTube channels that teach English through conversations or stories makes it more engaging.
Shadowing. That's where you try to speak along with the recording, right? Mimicking the pronunciation and rhythm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's powerful because it forces you to actively replicate the sounds in the flow. Great for pronunciation.
Okay, so looking at these ideas from the source, cartoons, learner podcasts, shadowing, YouTube, what's one English media source you could start listening to or watching regularly? Maybe turn on those subtitles to begin with.
Now, we've touched on vocab, speaking, listening. Let's get into something that often feels like the trickiest part, grammar.
Ah, yes, grammar. The source tackles this head-on as a key strategy, learning grammar step by step. It doesn't shy away from saying grammar is vital for understanding how the language fits together.
And this is the key part. It stresses, starting with the absolute basics. Don't try to learn everything at once.
It's like building a house, right? You need that solid, simple foundation first before you add fancy extensions.
Precisely. And the source actually lists the specific beginner grammar points to focus on initially. Things like simple present, past, and future tenses.
Yeah.
Really fundamental.
Okay, basic tenses. What else?
Subject-verb agreement, making sure your verbs match your subjects. Prepositions of place and time, like in, on, at. Articles a, and, the. Those are tricky but necessary.
Yeah, articles can be tough for learners.
And getting a handle on common irregular verbs, like go, went, eat, ate. Really key for talking about the past.
So these are the real nuts and bolts you need to build basic, correct sentences.
Exactly, and how to learn them. The source suggests using grammar workbooks, watching grammar tutorials online, there are tons of good ones. Actively writing sentences using the new rules is crucial.
Right, you have to use the rule to really learn it.
And getting corrections. Again, it mentions tools like Grammarly can help identify where you might be going wrong with structure.
So that list of basics from the source, simple tenses, subject-verb agreement, prepositions, articles, irregular verbs, which specific grammar point could you choose to focus on understanding a bit better this week? Maybe find a quick video, try writing a few sentences.
Shifting gears slightly, but still related to seeing language in action. Let's talk about reading.
Yes, another powerful tool the source emphasizes. Key strategy number 6, reading as a daily habit. It points out multiple benefits. You build vocabulary, you see sentence structures, you absorb grammar, all in context.
Reading just constantly feeds your brain correct examples of the language. And you can control the pace, unlike listening sometimes.
And the source gives practical reading suggestions specifically for beginners, right?
Yes, it says start with graded readers. These are books written intentionally with simpler vocab and grammar for different learner levels.
So you can actually follow the story and enjoy it, not just struggle with every other word.
Exactly. It also recommends reading English news websites designed for learners like VOA Learning English, and following blogs or social media accounts with short, simple English content.
Little bites of reading throughout the day.
Right. The key, according to the source, is finding stuff that's both at your level and actually interesting to you. That's what makes it sustainable.
Makes sense. So thinking about fitting this in, how can you make reading just a small, consistent part of your daily routine? Even 5 or 10 minutes, like the source implies, adds up over time.
Yeah, all these strategies, vocab, tech, speaking, listening, grammar, reading, they work much better if you actually know what you're aiming for.
Which brings us to key strategy number 7, setting realistic and measurable goals. The source says goals are essential for motivation and for tracking your progress.
Yeah, it really pushes making goals specific, measurable, and time-based. Not just, I want to get better English, but something concrete.
Because that gives you a clear target, right? And lets you see when you've actually achieved something, which feels good.
Exactly. And the source gives great examples of what realistic goals for beginners look like. Things like, learn 10 new words every week.
Okay, specific and measurable.
Or, have a 5-minute conversation in English daily, even if it's just with yourself.
Achievable.
Watch 1 English video per day with subtitles. Write 1 short paragraph a day in English. See, they're manageable steps.
And when you hit those small goals consistently, they build up. It cuts through that feeling of being overwhelmed.
Definitely. So, based on these ideas from the source, what's one specific measurable goal you could set for your English learning? Maybe just for the next week.
Thinking about reaching those goals, the path isn't always smooth. You're definitely going to make mistakes along the way.
Which is precisely why key strategy number 8 is so important. Not fearing mistakes. The source tackles this common fear head on.
Yeah, that fear can be paralyzing for learners.
Totally. But the source's core message here is really powerful. It says, mistakes aren't failures. They're a necessary, unavoidable part of learning. They're actually opportunities.
Opportunities to see where you need to focus.
Exactly. The fear of making mistakes, that's what actually stops progress. The source gives advice on how to embrace them. Shift your perspective.
Like what?
Like, celebrate small successes. Focus on what you can do. Learn from corrections. See them as helpful feedback, not criticism. Maybe even keep a journal of common mistakes and how you fix them. Tracking shows you're learning from them.
It's about reframing them, isn't it? Seeing mistakes as data points, valuable information.
Precisely. They show you exactly what to work on next. So the question for you is, how can you start shifting your mindset today to see mistakes not as something scary, but as essential stepping stones?
Stepping stones often involve just being around the language more.
Which leads perfectly into key strategy number 9, immersion. The source points out that creating an immersive environment is a powerful accelerator. Even if you can't, pack up and move to London or New York right now.
Right. You can create a surprising amount of immersion right where you are.
The source has practical ideas for this. Simple things, like changing your phone or computer language to English.
That's an easy one. Constant, small exposures every time you use your device.
Exactly. Labeling things around your house with their English names, actively watching English videos or listening to music daily, even just trying to think in English when you're planning your day or making simple decisions.
That thinking in English one is interesting. Forces you to retrieve the language actively.
Yeah. And all this constant exposure, even passive stuff like music in the background, helps your brain just get used to the sounds, the patterns, the rhythm of English. It absorbs it more naturally.
So, based on the source's ideas here, what's one simple thing you could do today to immerse yourself a bit more in English? Maybe just changing that phone language setting.
Okay, we're nearing the end of the strategies from the source. And the final one really ties everything together.
Key strategy number 10, staying consistent and motivated. The source really emphasizes that learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint. Consistency is paramount.
It makes a crucial point. Even just 15–30 minutes of focused practice daily is way, way more effective than trying to cram for hours once a week.
It's that regularity that builds the pathways in your brain.
Exactly. It builds habit. And the source offers tips for staying motivated over the long haul because, let's face it, motivation can dip.
Like what kind of tips?
Tracking your progress, seeing how far you've come is a huge motivator. Rewarding yourself when you hit those small, specific goals we talked about earlier.
Little treats for hitting milestones. Nice.
Joining online communities of other learners that provide support, accountability, a sense of shared journey, and, critically, revisiting why you started learning English in the first place.
Connecting back to your original motivation, that can really reignite the spark when things feel tough.
Remembering your why and maybe connecting with others helps you push through. Consistency, even in small doses, builds momentum. The source makes that very clear.
So, thinking about making English learning a consistent part of life, how can you commit to that regular, even short, daily practice? Maybe take a moment right now, like the source suggests, and revisit your personal why.
So this deep dive into the source material, it really clarifies things, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Improving English as a beginner, yeah, it's a challenge, but it's absolutely doable with the right approach.
The right strategies, focusing on practical steps, having that helpful mindset we talked about.
It gives you, the listener, a clear roadmap based on techniques the source says are effective. Fluency is a journey. Step-by-step progress is the name of the game.
Keep learning, stay curious, and try to find some enjoyment in the process. It's pretty amazing discovering a new way to communicate.
Absolutely. And maybe a final thought to leave you with, building on what the source says about consistency and the journey. What does consistency truly look like for you in practice, starting today? How does simply showing up each day, even for just those 15, 20, 30 minutes the source recommends, how does that transform what feels like an overwhelming mountain into just a series of manageable steps you can actually climb, day by day?
Yeah, think about the incredible cumulative power of those small daily efforts, what they add up to over weeks and months and even years. It's pretty profound when you frame it like that.